Shalom, friends. Rabbi Bradley Shavit Artson of the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies at American Jewish University in Los Angeles. It's always amazing to me how the weekly Torah portion has a piece of wisdom designed for that particular moment if you're open to it. Always something contemporary that comes from this timely and timeless classic. And so in this week's Torah portion, BeHar, BeHukotai, at the very end of the book of Leviticus, we read about a cycle of years that continues to elevate all of us and to challenge us. Every 7 years is a Shemita year, a year in which we are commanded to allow the land to rest and to renew itself. And it reminds us that we do not own it in perpetuity. We're simply granted the rights to use it. And then after 7 cycles of 7 years, in that 50th year, that's a Yovel, from which the English word Jubilee is taken. And this celebration is not just a letting everything rest and settle, but it's also a year in which things return to their original state. So land that was sold, it turns out, is not sold in perpetuity. It's sold for a finite period of time, and then it's returned to its original family. This was ancient Israel's way of assuring that the wealth can only become wealthy to a certain degree, that the poor can only become poor to a certain degree, and that the radical extremes that separate the wealthiest and the poorest is kept in check. And this becomes a shock for modern readers because we think of ourselves as somehow above it all. We are above nature. We're outside of the fray. Western people think that they're above the economic and biological forces that have constrained all living things from the beginning. What a shock in the middle of this pandemic, when we're still sheltered in our homes, most of us, to realize that we are not outside of the natural order. We are simply a manifestation within. And the language that the Bible offers us for that shocking but important insight is found also in today's Torah reading. The Torah tells us, "V'ha'aretz lo timkor litzmitut," you shall not sell the land in perpetuity, "ki li ha'aretz, ki gerim v'toshavim atem imadi," because the land belongs to me, says God, and you are only resident tenants on my land with me. So, a couple thoughts from this remarkable insight. We think of ourselves as the masters of our own destiny, as in complete control of ourselves and the planet. How ironic in this time of coronavirus, a little tiny organism from a distant part of the world has now set the entire globe into shelter. And that reminder is the same message as we find in the Bible this week, that we are not the owners of creation. We get to be part of creation. Each human being is born into a world that already exists. We have a moment of consciousness, and then we return back into the grand oneness from which we emerged. And in Jewish tradition, as in Christian and Muslim tradition, that oneness has a name. We call that oneness God, and we perceive it to be a unifying and loving and powerful source of thriving. God invites us to recognize that it's not about us. Ki li ha'aretz, for the earth belongs to the one who created it. And we are gerim v'toshavim, we are resident tenants who are given permission to care for the earth, to care for each other, and then return it to its rightful ownership. So in the midst of this pandemic, my friends, let's rededicate ourselves to caring for each other and this beautiful jewel of a planet a bit better than we did. Let's remind ourselves that we are here for a moment, but that the earth abides, the mountains abide, and the one who called us all into being has invited us to a feast if we can live with each other in harmony, and if we can live in a way that preserves this beautiful planet. Shalom.